No, there is no such thing as an objectively good video game, since video games are an art form which ultimately makes the experiences and emotions that we feel from games personal to each player and their headspace when playing the game, but that's not quite the direction I'm taking with this video. If you follow gaming discussion and the like, you will see the term greatest of all time show up a lot. Not just people having their own personal favorite games, no, people coming together to claim that this game is one of the best games ever made, in a way making it a collective objective statement. I'll admit I've done so as well, and I will say that games like Elden Ring, Metroid Prime and Super Mario Galaxy, for instance, are some of the pinnacles of gaming. However, not everyone will enjoy these games, and that's fine. So what makes a game be seen as objectively good by so many people that they get the term greatest game of all time? And can there actually be a game that is objectively good? So I think I'll start off with very surface level reasons and go deeper as the video progresses. First, we can look at the tip of this iceberg, which is an aspect that can be used to see how good a game actually is, which are sales figures. In the simplest terms, the more a game sells, that must mean that a lot of people like it and deem it good enough to be recommended to other players. If we take a look at some of the best selling games of all time, we've got your Rockstar games like Red Dead and GTA, The Witcher 3 also sits nicely up there, some good Nintendo games like Breath of the Wild and Mario Kart 8, and many more titles that are critically acclaimed. But you can probably tell that the cracks are starting to show with this theory. There are games on this best-selling list that should be far away from any greatest games of all time list. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is a technical disaster considering what can be done on a Switch. FIFA 18 is literally just the same game of football with a new roster, and PUBG, which I don't think really pushes the boundaries of what games can achieve. The point is that sales don't necessarily mean that a game is good, or bad even, it just means that it has gotten more mainstream appeal. However, if we look at franchises in a vacuum, there are many times where the sales numbers are an indicator of how good the game is. Super Mario Odyssey is regarded as the best Mario game by many and is the best selling game in the series. Baldur's Gate 3 has sold a lot more than its predecessors and is arguably one of the best games of all time. So although sales don't directly translate to the game's quality, in the context of previous titles, it does give an indication of how good the game is and that the game in question has gotten mainstream appeal. But that leads into the next question. What causes this mainstream appeal? Well, that's where one of the main topics of this video comes into play: accessibility. And the first type of accessibility is in the form of the mixing and simplification of genres. If you think out some of the most popular games in recent years, they mix and match different aspects from different genres to create a broader appeal. Zelda and From Software went open world in traditional linear exploration type settings with Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring. Capcom remade their older RE titles in a modern third-person perspective, and even Final Fantasy taken more real-time action elements into their combat systems. Although not all these games have sold massive amounts of copies, some of them have though, what these games managed to achieve is bring in a lot of new fans to the series. I'll admit, I became a Resident Evil fan because of how much I loved RE2 Remake, and it made me go back and play the other games in the series, even though how different they are from RE2 Remake. Despite the older titles not having the movement and gameplay elements of 2 Remake, they all share the same feel of Resident Evil. That's ultimately what gets the newer players to stay for the franchise. Taking inspirations or aspects from other genres or games and incorporating them well into a game shines a new light on how you can view the series. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, although fully open world, still feels like Zelda. 2D and 3D Mario games still feel like Mario. Sekiro and Elden Ring feels like From Software. I know what I'm saying is a bit generic since these inspirations are light differences, but just look at these comparisons of mainline games. It's not just because development technology has improved and making it easier to fulfill creative visions without having to limit the development, but because there are fresh ideas and spins on older formulas that appeal to a wider audience, but also remains true to what they are. But speaking on technology, this is where I think we can now try and talk about the more objective good game, if we can call it that. When I think of characteristics that make a game good, there are two factors that I think stand out. First is immersion. Immersion is arguably the most important aspect in what makes or breaks a game. If you can't lose yourself in the game's world, chances are you won't enjoy the game. Yes, that is kinda self-explanatory, but there are some games that I've played but never really got myself immersed in. Doom 2016 is a big one for me. Although I played a good chunk of the game, I never found myself drawn into the game. The combat was great, but I just couldn't find myself to finish the game. It didn't hook me. Same thing happened with Final Fantasy 3, but just that I dropped it way earlier than I did with Doom. So that's why immersion is important, how it manages to make you feel like you're part of this grand world. Games like Elden Ring, Tunic, Xenoblade, Shadow of the Colossus, Donkey Kong Country, Resident Evil, All of these games are so out there with their concepts, but are made with so much love as an art form that you just lose yourself in the sheer quality and passion that the devs have made this game with. But every so often, there's a game that comes along that you might not jive with, but you can see and understand how and why people immerse themselves in these worlds. Many times you can just look at a game and see how good the game sets out to do what it wants to, and you know it succeeds. But that's the thing with art, and that is subjective, meaning it's not for everyone. I love Cyberpunk, but I struggle a lot to get into The Witcher 3. Same thing I can say about Red Dead Redemption 2. I'm enjoying so many aspects of the game, I can really see why people love this game to the moon and back, but there are just some stuff that doesn't really fit with me as a person, and that's okay because, like I said, not everything is made for everyone. But still on Red Dead Redemption 2, I think it's also a highlight for the second factor that I said I would mention, which is feature completeness? Not sure if that's a word, but basically a game that is ready on arrival. No DLC, a complete experience, and importantly, no bugs. However, thanks to the importance that the internet has had on gaming since the past decade, lots of games take some liberties to ship incomplete experiences, if we can call it that. No hate towards DLCs, but lots of times games have DLCs or even experiences that could have been added into the base game. And sometimes it's not just content, but actually being able to play the game. Games like Cyberpunk, No Man's Sky, Fallout 76, Battlefield 2042, and more were all plagued at launch for either being unplayable with unfinished code or just straight up not being what the game was promised to be. However, these games mentioned now have recovered a lot from their first showings upon release, thanks to the internet and community feedback. But then you have games like Red Dead Redemption 2, which is such an expansive and feature-rich game, or Kirby and the Forgotten Land, which is, as far as I know, a game that released without a day one patch. That really shouldn't be something I should be highlighting, but in this day and age, it's an incredible feat. Despite all these stats and ideas that I've thrown around in this video, I was set on talking about one area in particular, which I think plays the biggest role in being called a good game, and that is how we play them, or how we can play them. Accessibility. We all play games differently. Some of us like to just play games for the stories, whilst others put themselves through Dante's Inferno when playing. Accessibility in this term, how we choose to play, is a very tough balance to make, as it always has to be in the sweet spot of risk and reward. You can't have everything be a cakewalk or be infuriatingly hard, as that's not fun for either party. FromSoft games, although difficult, do have an organic form of accessibility, with the magic system in their games being easy mode a lot of times, or games like Hades, where the accessibility feature makes the game ever so slightly easier every time you die. That's what I think really helps in making games stand out and be great, when it doesn't divert from its core design whilst letting players play the way they want to. And there are other times where players can only play a certain way because of physical limitations. That's right, accessibility in its truest sense, being accessible to all kinds of players despite any disabilities that they may have. Games are tough to make for everyone, as they have to check off so many boxes in order for it to work. I'm not the right guy to speak about these accessibility features in games, but I really commend games for taking the time to make their games be played by more players. The Last of Us Part 2 can be beaten if you're visually or audibly impaired. Celeste has an assist mode with a plethora of features to those who have difficulties with its challenges, or Street Fighter 6 and being open to players who might not have the fastest reaction times. Some might say that some of these ways are not the intended way the game is meant to be played, but to that I say, that's the best way a game is meant to be played for a good amount of gamers out there to play. And with that, welcome to the end of the video. Now that I'm writing the conclusion of this video, I think I've gone all over the place and kind of lost the main gist of what I was talking about, but regardless, I hope you enjoyed the video on video game accessibility and what makes certain games so beloved by many, and how more gamers can experience these works of art. A like, comment, dislike, and subscribe all help the channel out, but with that said, that's all for me today. I'm like super tired, I just really need to sleep right now. But again, thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Have a good rest of your day, night, and week, and with that, Storm out.